Ms. Fraser-Butlin, before Mr. B gives evidence, let me remind people of the order which I told you earlier this morning, those of you who are here, I would make. This is an order designed to protect the anonymity of the witness. The order is that the name and address of witness W1943, we shall know him as Mr. B, and any other identifying information, such as the witness's image or a description of their appearance, cannot be disclosed or published in any form unless express permission is given by me or by the solicitor to the inquiry acting on my behalf. Witness W1943 must be referred to only as Mr. B. The order remains in force for the duration of the inquiry and at all times thereafter, unless otherwise ordered, although I may vary or revoke it by making a further order during the course of the inquiry. I would of course only do so if a proper reason arose. Can I remind those of you who are tweeting, by all means tweet, but don't in it say anything which could lead to the identification of this witness, Mr. B. If anyone does, they're in serious trouble. Mr. B.
Mr. B, your full name is known to the inquiry. Please repeat after me. I do solemnly, sincerely.
I do solemnly, sincerely.
And truly declare and affirm.
And truly declare and affirm.
That the evidence I shall give.
That the evidence I should give.
Shall be the truth.
Shall be the truth.
The whole truth.
The whole truth.
And nothing but the truth.
And nothing but the truth. Thank you.
Mr. B, you have beta thalassemia.
Yep.
Please can you tell us what that is?
It's a genetic blood disorder, chronic anemia. My body doesn't produce red blood cells. And yeah, it's not a good thing. Without red blood cells, we can't breathe, we can't function, and we will die. So the treatment for that will be is regular blood transfusions.
How frequently do you have those transfusions?
So currently, at this age, it's every 4 weeks I have 3 units of blood. As a child, you didn't need as much blood, and it might be 2 units every 6 weeks. And as you're getting older, they step it up.
Are there any side effects of having regular transfusions?
Yes, absolutely. So with the constant infusion of blood, what happens is iron starts to build up in your body. And the iron will build up in your vital organs, mainly your heart, your pancreas, your thyroid, and various different parts of the body. And if it gets too much, those organs will fail. So we need a treatment for that.
And how is that treatment?
So the treatment has evolved over the years. As a child, from about the age of 5, it was an injection in the backside, administered by the nurse and then my parents. Now, it evolved to a more effective treatment, but a much harder regime where you had to inject, put a butterfly into your stomach, a butterfly needle with a little pump. We used to do it in the evenings, and it had to stay for 10 hours, slowly pumping in the drug. Now, at first, my parents used to do it, but then from about the age of probably 11, 12, I was doing that myself.
And now, how is
And
it
now
dealt with?
It's evolved into tablets. There's different forms of tablets on the market. But some patients are not tolerant to those tablets and still have to go via the old regime of long injections.
So you still have, and you were having very regular blood transfusions. Were you ever warned of any risks involved in those transfusions apart from the iron issue?
No, it was only the iron.
You contracted hepatitis C from one of those transfusions.
Yes.
But understandably, you don't know which transfusion infected you.
No.
You were told that you'd contracted hepatitis C in 1988 or 1989, somewhere around that time.
That's what we believe, yeah.
How were you told?
So I was called into my consultant called my parents, well, me, my parents, went to the haematology department, and our consultant just came out with it. You've got Hep C. Now, our consultant had looked after us since we were little kids, babies, and she never put sugar coating on anything. She just told us the way it was. My parents had no idea what it was, but as parents who are immigrants, I guess, their understanding is limited, and they started to fear the worst. Oh, you've got a virus, etc., etc. And that was it, really. And the consultant turned around and said to us, "Don't worry, we're going to beat this." And that was the whole content of the meeting.
You were in your early 20s at that point.
Yeah.
And you've said that your parents were in pieces.
Oh, absolutely. Because having to, one, accept they've got 2 kids with thalassemia major, beta major, and then to be told this, it really hit them hard. And they were aware of AIDS at the time, and they thought it was kind of the same thing, but yeah, they reacted badly.
You've said there were no leaflets, no handouts, there really was no available information.
No.
How did you react to the news?
I thought, okay, here we go. Another problem to deal with. But then it manifested in my mind a lot more, and it started to make me think, why am I bothering with, at the time, the painful treatment? Why bother with all of that if you've now got this virus that's attacking your liver? And I wasn't great at biology, but I know you need a liver. It started to manifest itself as very negative thoughts.
And at that stage you told your partner that you couldn't carry on taking your iron chelation therapy for thalassemia, because what's the point? Even if I'm treating the thalassemia, the hepatitis C is going to kill me.
That's exactly what I said to her. It just felt like all of the suffering from the years before, it just felt too big for me to overcome at the time. Because, I was young, and told my girlfriend exactly how you put it. There's no point.
You've said in your statement that all the thalassemia patients were told at about the same time.
Yeah, all of those who tested positive for HCV and HIV at the time, it was like one in, one out, there was a special clinic that they held, the one I went to, and we were just told.
Were you aware that you were being tested?
No. I mean, I have every month before having blood, you have to have a cross match and multiple other blood tests. So no, it was just either another tick in the box or right of forms, but we never used to see the forms back then.
Now, when you go in for transfusions, you often see the same people, don't you?
Absolutely.
And you say there's a thalassemia community.
Yep.
And that going in for blood used to be a bit of a social event, especially
Absolutely.
when you had to stay in overnight.
Yeah, back in the day, it was for us that worked or who couldn't come during the day. We'd stay overnight, normally on a Friday night, and it was a party atmosphere. We'd take crisps and food and our little ghetto blasters. You know, it was great. But we were all friends. Kind of, we're called like blood brothers and sisters because we're linked by this blood disorder, and we started. You know, that's when you started to hear like, did you get any results, or you know, and that's how it started. You know, people talking to each other. You know.
But within that community,
Yeah.
you've said that people didn't really say whether they were infected or not.
No, there was some people that, you know, it's only like now, 30 years later, that you're hearing, oh, did you know? So people were very, very secretive about it. I only ever openly talked about it with one other patient.
And you
Yeah.
called the virus something quite
Yeah,
particular.
So when we were talking, we would refer to the virus as the plague. Yeah, that's what it felt like to us. Something that was destroying us, and we would, you know, we'd get our plague updates from one another, and so on and so forth.
Why do you think that within the thalassemia community people weren't saying that they were infected? What was it?
Well, it was, in its simplest terms, it was a virus transmitted via blood, which immediately people start looking at you and stigmatizing you, and then thinking, well, is it like HIV? Are you know, there was a lot of stuff on the news about HIV and all that. So we felt that we were contaminated or infected by blood. So we didn't want to kind of talk about it or put it out there, because as you go through the statement, you'll see later on there was stigma from medical professionals.
You describe it as all I knew about it back then was AIDS, but then as time progressed and there were a few clinics where we found that they would treat hepatitis C,
Yeah.
you started to see a few people that were attending those clinics with you, and it was a nod. Many chose to be secretive about it because of the stigma associated with being infected.
That's right.
In about 1990, you started treatment for the hepatitis C,
Yep.
and that was interferon.
Yep, just interferon.
And you became even more depressed at that point.
I think one would say that's when the real depression started. Yep, so it was just, with all of the other side effects that I think we all know about, the fevers, the insomnia, the inability to sleep, came a depression. And it wasn't good for me in the sense that I was taking it out on my treatment of the thalassemia. So yes, around that time is where I started to feel generally low. And I just felt like, you know, I kept saying to myself, my girlfriend, what's the point? What's the point? You know? So, yeah, we went through this treatment.
You thought it would kill you, was what you were thinking.
Yeah, it was hard on the body, even worse on the mind. That's the thing, because the physical symptoms come and go, you know, but it's, I guess, the mental impact it had on me that, yeah, I thought it was going to kill me, or I was going to kill me, yeah.
When you started treatment, you were still working.
Yes.
What were you doing?
I was a computer engineer, qualified Olivetti engineer, and also I was studying C programming, and I was also had the ability to do assembly language programming at the time.
But
which
during the treatment, you stopped?
Yeah, I couldn't. The physical toll and the mental, you know, my capacity to work was gone completely.
After 6 months of the treatment,
Yep.
You hadn't responded, so the treatment was stopped.
That's correct, yeah.
Then a few years later, you were treated again, this time with peg interferon and ribavirin.
Yep.
What can you recall about how you felt during that second round of treatment?
What I would say, it was worse, much worse than the first round. In terms of physical impact, you know, pretty similar to the first round, but the mental impact, you know, there were some very dark thoughts going through my mind, dark. I went through a phase of just closing people out, rather than having to face anyone, just close the doors on everyone, and I would be in my own little world with my thoughts. Yeah.
You've said you started worrying about things you'd never worry about before.
Yes.
While you were on treatment, you had no positive thinking.
No.
You kept thinking that you were going to beat the thalassemia, but that you were going to die of liver failure.
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. And also, it's this irrational worrying about everything, a kind of paranoia, anxiety, you know. I would, as I think it's on my statement, I would get in my car and I'd start panicking, thinking, what if I crash? What if something happens to me on the way? Just completely irrational thoughts, you know. I could find something to worry about on anything, on any event, you know.
That second round of treatment
Yeah.
also failed.
Yep, that
And
failed.
In 2002, you had a third round of treatment.
That's correct.
This time again with ribavirin and interferon.
Yep.
This time you suffered with the loss of appetite, the fevers again,
Yep.
and your lymph glands became swollen.
Yep.
And you became very emotional.
Yes, very emotional. It's also, I think, the first time I noticed that I've lost my sharp responses to questions and my wit and all those wonderful things that I was proud of as a younger man. Things were slowing down up here in the head, because it was a brutal 18 months of treatment. You know, there's a picture of me, you don't have it, but I was at a party, a thalassemia event, and I look back at that picture now and I just see a skeleton, a skeletal, you know, it's frightening.
You've described that again you suffered from very severe anxiety.
Yep.
you felt completely sad and empty inside.
Yep.
You started worrying about how you would get anywhere. If you were travelling on a train, you'd be worried that the train was crashing. What
Yep.
if you got robbed or mugged?
Yeah, I would worry about everything.
But the hardest thing I think you in this stage of treatment was the insomnia.
Yes.
What can you tell us about that?
I was working at the time, and what I had to do in preparation for this treatment was I downgraded jobs. I found a job that I could do, so I worked in a shop selling mobile phones, and I would go. I would actually get home. I was so tired. I would eat, go to bed. I would not be able to sleep, but it was the thoughts and the fears and that darkness in my head again that just kept going, and the worry, just random things to worry about. And I'd be lucky if I got, say, 2 hours, maybe 3 at best, worth of sleep before having to get back to work.
And that meant that when you went back to work the next day,
It meant I was in great shape. I was very tired. The treatment was harsh enough, the physical effects of the treatment. Luckily, at the time, my manager in the store was an old friend, so he would put me on back office duties when I used to say to him, "It's a bad day for me today." He'd put me in the back to just do, so I wouldn't have to deal with the public and be on my feet all day. But it was hard focusing. You know, doing the simple tasks, I struggled.
you underwent that treatment for about 18 months.
Yeah.
And this time you successfully cleared the virus.
Yeah, 2004, around November, I was told. It's been clear for quite a while now, so yeah, that was good news.
But unfortunately you continue to feel quite unwell.
Yeah, once the dust had settled and the treatment had stopped, the anxiety and the slowness didn't go away. So from 2004 to today, there's been a decline in my ability to think clearly, to be focused, and my anxiety levels are always high. I mean, I'm anxious right now, but it's the silly things, the irrational things that cause me the most amount of anxiety. And, you know, I've been lucky enough from working in a mobile phone shop to getting a good job as a business analyst, project manager, but there's been a decline, and I noticed I left work last year in March, but 4 years prior to that, there was a decline. I'd go to meetings with my clients. I'd forget what we spoke about. You know, when I was writing down notes, I would miss things out. And, you know, luckily for me, or unluckily maybe, I was made redundant. The role was made redundant last year, but it worked out quite well for me because I'd been with the company for 15 years almost, so I got my redundancy. And my fears are now all about the future. The past is done. A lot of questions about the past, but I'm more concerned of what lies ahead. What if I can't get a job that I want? What if it gets worse, you know?
You'd rebuilt your career
Yeah,
after that final round of treatment up to a much more senior position,
yep,
and then chose after your redundancy not to look for a job
yep,
at this stage
yep.
because you didn't feel you were capable of dealing with it.
Yeah, and I'm not capable of doing what I was doing. I can never be a project manager or a business analyst again. Not while my head is in the shape it is. And, you know, what I'm going to do, I have no idea at this stage.
You've had several liver biopsies,
Yeah.
and it's been confirmed that you have cirrhosis of the liver.
Yes, that was confirmed not long after I was diagnosed. The first liver biopsy pretty much confirmed that. Then they wanted to do a couple more for some reason. So, yeah.
And you've said, I'm no wimp when it comes to pain from procedures,
Yeah.
but the impact of the pain of the biopsies was terrible.
Yeah, it was the first one set the impression. When they first, because you're awake, they use local, they plunge you, but he missed the liver, so we had to go twice. So after that, the agreement, the only way I would agree to have a liver biopsy is to be put under general. And it was painful, I can't tell you.
You've also had some heart problems.
Yes, I've got heart problems, diabetes, you know,
Pancreatic enzyme
deficiency, yep.
which means you have to take tablets before you eat.
Yes, so my food can be broken down and the nutrients taken in by the body. Otherwise, the nutrients all just leave the body.
And you're not sure whether that's because of the treatment for hepatitis C or something related
Yeah.
to thalassemia.
It's one of those things where with the diabetes, the heart, and this enzyme deficiency, it's more than likely thalassemia, yeah, but we don't know.
You say in your statement that the stigma in society has
Yeah.
had a profound impact
Yeah.
on you. Can you tell us what that's meant for you?
Well, there's different facets of it. First, I'm of Cypriot origin, and if the Cypriot community, so what my parents' community, as I call them, have they always look down at a thalassemic, yeah? If you had a son that wanted to marry a girl with thalassemia, no, and vice versa. To add to that mix, you say you've got a infection, it doesn't matter, you could be cured or whatever, that's one level of stigma. The other stigma, I had very bad treatment, or the way I was handled by the dental profession.
Can we come to that in a
Yeah.
moment? Just staying with the stigma within the community, you've said that you didn't speak about your infection with your friends.
No,
Your parents knew, but it became a dirty secret.
absolutely, yeah,
It's also impacted on your personal relationships.
yes.
And in the 1990s, you split up with a long-term girlfriend.
Yeah, in 1999, I split up with a woman I was with for 13 years, and we were happy, we were in love, but she wanted a family or a commitment from me. And because I never cleared, I was still HCV positive, I said, no way, there's no way I'm going to commit to you, start a family, and die of liver failure. Looking back with hindsight now, maybe I shouldn't have done that, but that's what I done at the time, and in 1999, she just had enough and went her own way.
And your fear at that time
Yeah.
wasn't dying of the thalassemia.
No.
It was dying of liver failure.
Yeah, because the thalassemia is in control. It has been for many years now.
You've spoken a couple of times about stigma that you faced from the medical and dental profession. In 2011, you decided to have your sperm frozen.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what happened?
So, for safekeeping, I thought I'd have it cryogenically frozen, and if I met the right person, you know, because thalassemia also impacts your reproductive systems and whatever. So it was the day of my surgery, and basically the cryogenics lab in London calls up to say, I'm sorry, but we can't store your sperm. Why? Because you're HCV positive. But I'm not. I've cleared. No, we've done your bloods and you've got the antibodies. So we all know that you'll have the antibodies pretty much forever. But it took several phone calls, faxes from my thalassemia hematology team to the cryogenics lab, to get them to agree. And I felt quite small. I don't know, I didn't feel right. Didn't feel right.
You also had issues with dental treatment.
Yes.
What can you recall about those issues?
I was in severe dental pain, so I thought, go out and find a dentist. You go into the dentist, because I wasn't registered with one, and fill in a form. There's a couple of questions on there. Have you been diagnosed with HIV, or have you been diagnosed with Hep C? So, keep it honest, I took Hep C. They refused to take me on. And this was a couple more dentists after. And then it got to a point where it was an emergency now.
So before it became an emergency, how many dentists do you think you'd been to?
If I remember, it was 3 or maybe 4. Because I walked down the high street where there was 3 or 4 dentists, and I tried them all.
And they'd all declined to treat you?
Yeah, for the same reason. And I went to King's Cross Dental Hospital. I got a referral, and they said to me, all right, we'll look after you, but you have to be the last patient of the day because we need to decontaminate everything. And that hurt, you know, for someone who spent his entire life in and out of hospitals, to now be treated so differently, that was painful, really. But it carried on. I mean, eventually there used to be a hospital off Tottenham Court Road, a dental hospital, which specialised in HIV patients. So I managed to get myself into that dental hospital, and they were looking after me until one day they said the funding for Hep C has been cut. It's only going to be HIV. And I thought, fine, my teeth were all right, you know, you don't worry about it. Maybe a few years went past and I had another problem with my teeth. Same thing. I could not find a dentist. Luckily, there was one guy that said he'd treat me, and he's been my dentist ever since.
But even on that second occasion, several years later,
Yeah,
again you went into dentists
yeah,
and they
absolutely.
wouldn't treat you.
Yeah.
Moving on to financial assistance, you've received payments from the Skipton Fund,
Yep.
But you weren't even aware that the Caxton Foundation existed.
No.
How did you find out about it in the end?
A lot of what I've learned over the years, past few years, is due to social media. Yeah. There's various groups, support groups out there, and they're talking about these things, Caxton and this and that, and I thought, but I've never pursued it. As far as I knew, I'm getting what I'm getting, and that's it. I was working as well, so, you know, I was happy with my life. But no, it's the social media groups that highlighted to me to other people who are having the same symptoms I'm having now. You know, it's like, oh, that's exactly what I'm going through. So a lot of my knowledge was sparked off by social media and then Google, and away you go.
But initially, all you were aware of through your treating doctors was Skipton.
Yeah.
Those are the questions I have for you. Is there anything
Okay.
else you would like to say?
Not a great deal. I mean, I think what the question I have is, there's what I need cleared up for my own head. I was, say, diagnosed in the late 80s, maybe 90s, early 90s. At what point did we, were all the HCV victims diagnosed around the same time, or were they earlier? Because if I was told earlier, potentially, you know, I might not have had or got the cirrhosis of my liver. And that's important for me to know, because if I could have been told, for instance, in 82, 83, it would have given me a few more years to try some treatment. It may not have worked, but that's what I want to know.
I'm just going to turn my back and ask Mr. Locke, who, as you know, represents you,
Yeah.
whether he has anything further. He doesn't have any further questions.
Nor do I. It remains for me to say thank you very much indeed,
Thank
Mr.
you.
B, for coming to give us evidence. You are the first witness to give evidence orally who suffered from thalassemia, and that perhaps demonstrates how particularly brave you have been to come and give evidence. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There is something generally I'd like to say, and it's to the press. Anything that the press can do to alert those who suffer from thalassemia to the fact that they can participate, if they wish to, in this inquiry, and they can do so in a way which protects their desire for secrecy, which Mr. B spoke of so eloquently, would be very much appreciated. We think it inconceivable that because those who suffer from thalassemia have regularly to have transfusions and did so during the 1970s, 1980s, into the 1990s, that they will not have suffered from hepatitis C in great numbers. And if they do and have not been tested, they may wish to know that and know that they can be treated. So, leaving aside even the inquiry, the knowledge that they might have been infected by regular transfusions during those years would be potentially of assistance, maybe even life-saving assistance for them. That's all I want to say, and I leave that in the good sense of the press as to whether they can do anything to assist. With those words, let me then say we'll take a break, shall we, till 2 o'clock?
And at 2 o'clock we'll hear from Mrs. C, and of course the live stream will be turned off this afternoon.
Yes.